over to F&M College. We've been trying to take our daughter to see some of the campuses just to get an idea of what type of size she likes and that sort of thing. We went through some of the back roads over through, holy moly, some of the homes are, they're probably his clientele.
Yeah. Finish setting up the getting the next round of recording, and he'll come in right at guaranteed. I left. I got him. I stayed as long as what it is. You really do enjoy punishing yourself, don't you? Is that Mike? Yeah, it's my name, sorry.
I was hoping you weren't going to show up.
I was thinking about that.
We were hoping you guys weren't going to show up, actually. Truth be told. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We actually are running the virtual conference, and so this is the last session. So I came ahead of Ben, and he started pressing record on all the sessions, and I guess they all got started, didn't they?
We have a red light here. I guess that's all that matters.
We're good.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is as your last session. We're glad to have you here. Actually, hopefully this won't be, I know it's a great way to start, is saying hopefully this isn't a disappointment for you. But this is only the real second time that we have dabbled in this area. So often you hear and see so many different ed tech, very centric topics at Pete and C. Ben and I have been coming to this event as long as this conference, I think almost as long as it's been in existence as Pete and C. I was a former chemistry teacher, Ben was a former physics teacher, and we worked together in that realm, and now we're both at the Lincoln Intermediate Unit providing professional services as well in the area of professional development. What?
Not was, I still have.
Well, I guess was, yeah, that's great. Hey, just get yourself set up here, Johnny come lately back there. So, what we really started to dive into and think about more recently is as we are observing, so often we can become disconnected. I think in a session I was just in maybe two days ago, talking about how insular the education profession can sometimes be, and the importance of getting into programs like Educator in the Workplace, or at least beginning to talk about the localized economy, talking with some of the business owners within your footprints. And so we've been really diving into this career readiness arena, looking at why and how we want to be preparing our students for the skills within the local region. So often we see schools looking at the broader perspective of college and career readiness, but what about feeding the pipeline? Right now, are you ready to start talking? Right now, we have thousands of openings in our footprint alone. We're in York, Adams, and Franklin counties. And Franklin County alone, I think the last time we looked, or we talked with their economic development group, they had over 3,000 openings and not the skilled and qualified talent to be able to fill those spots. And so as we've been diving into this idea of how the workplace is changing and how the career readiness is changing, we really see it as two primary areas. We see that there is this idea of how consumerism drives us as humans. Okay? Whether you are or you're not a consumer in that regard, it's a thing. We can't ignore it. So we're going to get into this very deeply into this session, but how many of you have an Amazon account? How many of you have an expectation, or a disappointment, maybe is the right way to say it, when something you order today won't be waiting for you today? Right? I mean, it's getting to that point, right? How many of you have ever ordered something and had it actually delivered the same day? Yeah, right? So the pre-staging, the actual algorithms and analytics that are going on to really drive those logistics, it's what's getting our consumer selves accustomed and programmed to have expectations. We can't leave those at the door when we go to our workplace, and we can't leave those preconceived, whatever you want to call those, personality expectations of our students at the door. They're coming to us, seeing mom and dad getting that, whatever it is that they've ordered for them the next day. And so that's the first area there, that lobe on the left. The other area that we're going to focus on today as well is just the idea of globalization and how, look at how we've been buried inside of a recording room for the last 3 days, so we haven't really saw a lot of news, but I think I saw the stock market dropped 1,000 points yesterday, right? All as a result of the coronavirus fears and the threats. I think I saw that come up on one of my streams. And so you can't hide from those things. Well, our students are being hammered by that. Well, what does that mean in our classrooms? We can't just say we're just not going to turn on the TV today. They're getting that news feed every day as well. So those two areas are the things that we decided to start diving into a little bit. So we're going to, hopefully this is a small group, it's the last session. We'd like to, I think we agree, we're building it out in terms of we have what is the consumer trend or the globalization trend. What we really are trying to build out more is the educational implications of what it means for us as teachers, administrators, school leaders.
And I would so when I think about who are your customers or your clients or your stakeholders, you know, it is students. Jared talked about students, but I think about parents. And so a parent who orders on Amazon, what's their expectation for the school and how that works? Board members, community members. I just want to think about those things so that I can be out front of the types of things that we see happening in other fields, and just realizing when is it coming to education, and how are we going to be ready for it. So, and the one thing, you know, in the picture, you notice the person who might be a teacher, right, with that responsibility, you can almost see it's a headache, right? And I think that I presented this to some teachers, and new teachers, and man, were they not happy. I mean, you know, like the expectation is, you'll see with some of these trends that we talk about it, and I just wonder, you know, like, okay, so maybe that impediment that we might feel could actually be the problem that we have to get past.
Well, and if you think about what you're going to see today here a little bit, I think the paradigm is identical. If you take it and kind of as an abstract and lay it over top of 20 years, 15 years ago, when we started bringing in laptop carts and breaking the mold of what traditional instruction looks like, I think we're seeing another shift. And I think it's too large now to ignore it. The Internet of Things are all around us. We have enough teachers. Where are our tech directors in here? How many of you have been already asked, at least in this year, but maybe even before, to get an Amazon Alexa or Echoes, you know, listening devices, getting them on your network so that they can use them in the classroom, right? We can't ignore it, right? I know there's security issues, I know there's privacy issues, but they exist. So that's really, we're not saying that we are well, we'll just let ourselves speak for ourselves. All right, so we'll let this play. There's no sound. This is just kind of the background. We kind of remember this era, right? This is not too long ago when, in order to get the best deals, the expectation was, this is Black Friday, right? Remember these days? This was not that long, 10 years ago. In fact, there is a website that we actually found that was called BlackFridayDeaths.com, where you can actually go and see all of the tragic events that have occurred due to the stampeding. However, have any of you participated in Black Friday this year especially? Anyone?
In the stores.
Did you go to a store? How many of you? Anybody? 1, 2, Shaker, you went to a store? Do you ever go to a store? Do you just go on Black Friday just to see what it's like? So the trend has even shifted. Black Friday isn't even Black Friday anymore. When did Black Friday sales start? A week before, online, right? Oh, you can go on, and the lightning deals on Amazon started, and Walmart, and Target, and all of them.
And not just, it's not even just the shopping experience, right? Because I can remember the time where you had to wait until you got the Thanksgiving newspaper, and then you would pull out all the sale bills, and you would go through page by page. And now, even those things are aggregated in apps, and you can start searching them, and they get leaked, or maybe they're officially released, I don't know, like a week, 2 weeks ahead of time, and you wait to see, like, what does Target do, because that informs Walmart, which informs Best Buy, and all of that information. So
what happened as a result of all of this? Well, those stores that have not appreciably altered their business model are seeing these types of headlines every day. Right? This is hot off the presses. This is just from January. Once the Q4 business reports came out, that's what we saw. They did not really change. You know, when you think about Kohl's, the only thing that Kohl's really has done to try and change their mold is they put an Amazon shipping center in the back. Have any of you seen that? You can go and just take your package there, that you already bought from Amazon, by the way, not Kohl's, and they'll give you a coupon. I went there, I'm like, what's all this stuff on racks? Weird. And go and take it back there, and they gave me a 20% off coupon if I shopped that day in Kohl's, to which I just laid it down somewhere and walked out of the store, right? That was their model. Well, you know, we all, sadly, probably are in a similar boat. We can all probably remember the excitement as a little one of getting the toy catalogs, right? Whether it was KB Toys or Toys R Us, or I remember the Sears catalog, the Sears and Roebuck catalog. Well, they've not appreciably changed, and now anything that was a viable product within their stores have now been bought up by companies. Craftsman is there. I mean, when you think about the flagship line of Sears, it's Craftsman. That's bought up by Lowe's now. So,
And the Sears in our area is turning into a casino.
that is
They've closed it.
absolutely true.
They're raising it, and a casino is going in place of where the Sears is.
So, which is a whole other probably presentation on the vices of humanity. So when we think about this, we could go on and on and on. I mean, this is almost too cliched here to talk about the idea of Blockbuster, and we don't want. And we start out this way in the other time that we've presented this. Is that we don't mean this to sound like, because you could go off the deep end here in a minute and say, wait a minute, are they saying that the traditional public education, four walls, kids coming to school are going out of business? No, the remaining 50 slides are not going to be talking about that.
I actually disagree.
well,
I think
we're-
the remaining 50 do point to the risks.
Would you let me finish?
No.
Let me finish. What the remaining 50 slides are going to focus on is what those first 4 slides, what those companies didn't do and didn't consider. And I think it is a direct parallel to the fact that they did not adjust to today's modern consumer. Okay? So that's the lead up, that's the kind of preface for what we're going to talk about today.
And the interesting thing to me is that I think schools may not necessarily see themselves in competition, but at least in our area, I do see that. I see like one district has developed a program, and the neighboring district, we're not yet at that point where all the kids have choice, but we have private schools that are trying to examine what's happening in our public schools. We have CTCs and schools saying, what do we need to do in order to maybe keep some of our students, or how do we work either in tandem or in competition with these other entities that are out there, and that includes higher ed, who is now coming into high schools and saying, we have programs that we can help you deliver your content. So we're in that space where we're starting to see that type of competitive nature, I think, in schools.
So when you see the shift, I mean, the natural inclination is to think all online, to think it's only stores that began online and continued that way. So we have obviously the Amazon here, we have the Alibaba. By the way, these are the top, I think we have 10, the top 10 e-merchant or e-retailers from last year. But when you look at that, you still have Target, you still have Walmart, okay? You still have Best Buy. Best Buy realized that they were the showroom for Amazon. Really, right? You wanted to go buy something on Amazon, but you wanted to get your hands on it first, you go to Best Buy to try it out. Then you go get it for 20% less. They realized that and knew that they had to break their business model.
And my wife is a Target shopper, but she goes to the store, and just recently, as we've started to move our shopping habits online, what she says is the website stinks and the app stinks. This is what she tells me, and I'm thinking, how long is it going to be before, as a consumer, she's not going to use Target? Because she still goes to the store. Like, if she has to go to a store, that's her store of choice to do that type of shopping. But if you're not doing that type of shopping, she's not buying it online. She just isn't. Not from Target. And so if that's something they don't fix, it's going to become a problem. And then the big box stores have also changed our buying habits. Oh, go ahead.
You were dying to talk about something that's later on.
Yeah.
So this, when we think about the online, that's one idea or one area that these retailers have gone to. But when you think about what Sam's and Costco and BJ's and those types have done, it's interesting. The paradox with it is that if you think about these stores, personalization is out the door. When you go to Sam's, you don't really have a lot of choice in terms of, like you do on Amazon. I can get 20 different types of pillows, right, on Amazon. I go to Sam's, there may only be 1, 2, or 3. I can buy 500 of them for a hotel chain. But here we're tapping into, and what the business model of Sam's is, the scale and the economy of scale and volume, and how we can get and take advantage of that. And schools have a lot to learn about being able to take advantage of economy of scale.
And we've seen another shift in terms of how you do your purchasing by these types of websites that you see up here, where now you can go out and you can find lots of people that are selling, and they're selling locally. And so there are ways that you can get to purchasing products that you couldn't do before.
Right, so if you think about this shift, the last 3 slides have really been about the retailer. Retailers that have moved to a hybrid environment. Retailers that tap into economy of scale, and retailers that are not really retailers at all. It's the flea market, right, of retail. How many of you have ever purchased something on Craigslist or Let Go or OfferUp or Etsy, right? These are things.
This is the Craigslist king.
Right. I don't think
his
that,
entire house came from Craigslist.
We can probably talk about that all day of how people have spun up cottage industries around buying and selling. It's like flipping houses, but it's doing so inside of that commercial environment. It's not just buying used junk anymore, right? So there is still some used junk, but it's not completely that.
So these are we were trying to think about the impact areas that this consumerism has, and then the idea is, okay, let's examine what the consumerism habits are, and then how might that apply to schools. And if you came thinking that we're going to give you any answers, then you're sadly mistaken, because we don't necessarily have answers. Like, we might have some suggestions as to what it might look like.
Well, we will have some, not might, we will.
Really?
Some.
Okay. For all the solutions, you'll hear them from Jared. So you can see things like convenience. I mean, we see convenience becoming a consumer habit. And what does that mean for schools in that regard? The economy of scale that Jared talked about with the big box stores, and the value that you get in making that purchase, right? The small shops that exist, so like the boutiques that are there, and there's now an online boutique and a way to personalize your purchasing for yourself. Well, how do we personalize that learning experience for students, and also like just the whole social network aspect of it? Because I just saw this minutes ago where we're looking for a specific part that we're going to purchase. And Jared goes down and somebody said, well, no, you need to go get the $89 one. So Jared pulls up I don't even know where he was shopping, but probably Amazon. He's looking and he's like, this one has great reviews, right? So like when we buy stuff, we're looking for like 1,000 reviews, 4 stars or more, right? Because so that aspect also helps us to inform us as consumers, and then the whole idea of personal choice. And so we're going to start with an example of personal choice, and it's the cord cutters. How many of you are cord cutters? Okay, so we have several in the room. And I know that this is a trend because my dad is asking me about it. And this is somebody who, as I tell the story, like about a year ago, finally got a DVR. And I went to him, and after about a month, I'm like, how do you like this? Like being able to record your shows and watch anytime. And he's like, we're not yet done with our tapes. Okay? And now, because
How big of a hard drive did you get for that DVR?
Well,
He's
it doesn't
backing up. It's gonna
it
be,
doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's going to be like a surveillance system.
Well,
It's going to start overriding.
And what's causing this? I mean, Comcast is causing this. My daughter she's a graduate. She has a job. She's almost entirely off the payroll. Thank you very much. And so she has an apartment, and she just called us. She's been in there 6 months. She called us and said, Comcast sent me a letter saying that they're raising their rates. Can they do that? And I'm like, right.
Bless her heart.
I said, well, yes, they can do that. To which she said, well, that's not fair. And again, like, that's so cute. Okay. So what is our choice? Our choice is to say, you know what, I don't need cable TV. I'm gonna cobble together services so that I can watch what I want to watch. And even though we have some of these things up here that, like, Netflix is additional content, but if you said that you wanted to replace, like, I want the cooking shows and the travel shows and the home building shows, you could go get like Philo. Like, there are apps that have brought together different networks that you can just purchase and say, that's what I want. Because we pay for Comcast, we get 300 channels and I watch 7, right? But I don't have a choice about the 293 other channels that are in there. And so
you really showed them. You had a $100 cable bill that.
Oh yeah.
And now you have $180 of cobbled together.
Absolutely. And
cable cuttings.
And it's not easy. So, but I can tell you what I want. What I want is to pay for what I use. Okay. And Again, you might feel differently, but I just want to pay for what I use, and that's all I need. And I also want it to be easy. I want my wife to be able to get to whatever show she wants without having to ask me. Okay? Because that just starts a fight.
So we've already talked about it from the seller side, but from
The buyer side.
We've already talked about it from the seller side. These areas here. Stop finishing my sentences and thoughts. I don't need you. Okay? But now flipping that over here to the consumer side, an idea of cord cutting. That's really what we're seeing here. The absence of going away from it. I'm telling you, before I go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and I'm going to go buy, if I know I have to buy 26 sheets of drywall to finish my basement, the first thing I'm doing is going on Craigslist and I type drywall. Because I want to find somebody who screwed up and ordered too much, and I'm going to get it for $5 a sheet instead of $15. Because I can go to their house and get it instead of going to Home Depot. It's a different type of consumerism.
But there's a seller aspect here as well that's kind of interesting, I think, because now I can become a seller. Like my brother said he's going to start Green Beard Spices, and that's because he has a green beard, which might say a lot, but I'm like, wait, you're going to start your own business? Tell me how you're going to do this. So he found a place that'll package it, and he's going to sell through Etsy, and he set up a store. And all of a sudden, we can now become sellers. And when you think about education, like kids are doing a lot of stuff on YouTube. How long is it before they start selling tutorial services? Like, in a sense, they can, I'm not saying they can replace teachers, but I might think about what kids might be able to do to start leveraging that type of platform for themselves. And as an example, so my daughter, who was an architect major, but also a math major, so she did both. Architects apparently are really bad at math, so she would run tutorial sessions, and she charged $5 an hour, minimum of 3 hours, to people that couldn't help her in exchange. And so they would just come and they would pay her for tutorial services. And she made a ton of money, way more money than she could make working any hourly job at that moment. So, those types of things become the way that we can monetize this, and kids know this. We see this through things like Twitch, okay, where kids are watching and paying to watch people game. And I think about this, like, when you look at, like, the viewing hours on League of Legends, and you're in 74 million hours on Twitch that have been watched, that we have to start thinking about, like, the competition that we might have for the services we provide.
But we like to think it from a perspective of not necessarily just competition, but actually leveraging it as a value. And you already kind of started to dive into a bit of a solution there, right? We see as educators, there's a tremendous set of valuable resources that idea of cobbling together. How many of you have recently acquired new textbooks? Right, those conversations, how many of you are seeing the trend of those going away and instead investing some of that capital into devices and allowing teachers to cobble together? That's, I think, the trend we're starting to see, right? The cable cutting, the cord cutting from the textbook providers and beginning to either create their own or find already curated resources. Well, students can do that same thing. And being able to, if we look at some of the standards outside of our own content areas, which I might argue that the career education work standards, we talked about them, and I think every other session we've done, one of the standard areas is on entrepreneurism. It's an area that, how many of you know students in your high school or your middle schools that have already started their own business or run a business? See a lot of hands nodding, right? It absolutely is an area that our students are able to pursue and dive into. So we think that this is the emerging trend, but it's because it used to be that if you were going to be an entrepreneur, you had like two choices. You could call up George Foreman on inventhelp.com, right? Remember those commercials where if you have a great idea, or you had to have enough money to be able to, or a financial backer to do it. Today, there's enough Indiegogo and Kickstarter. There's enough funding and resources that if you have a really good idea, you can get out there. It's not going to be too long before kids are starting to see that and tap into that and be able to help each other. The tutoring is a perfect example of that. Helping each other gaming as esports become bigger is a perfect example of that.
So this is a good sort of maybe pause point to see your reaction or comments or questions that you might have at least in this area, before we jump into sort of the next consumerism trend that we see?
Go ahead, yeah.
I have a question about internet access and streaming, and we still have students in our district and teachers who don't have either internet at all or a high-speed internet. So if I hear one more person tell me how great Disney Plus is, I live in the woods, only 7 miles from where I work. We can't stream anything. We have students who have to do work on their Chromebooks offline and then upload it once they get back to school. How does that factor into, they can't do Khan Academy at home?
Today. So the answer I'm going to say, I know you were breathing as if you were going to say something. Do you want to go? Because I don't want you to complete my thought.
Far be it from me. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Today, I mean, what I see tremendously, I'm very active. Our footprint is highly rural in York, Adams, and Franklin counties. I've sat on, it's called Adams County Connected. It was a board that was developed by the Adams County Commissioners. I'm now working directly with one of our local community TV stations to help investigate and dive into the area of rural broadband and the connectivity. It is becoming, Kristen Phillips Hill's a legislator that actually was in Mr. Roberts' footprint, that is a strong advocate now in the Senate, focusing on this. I think, and we're seeing it at the national level. Both Ben and I are members of CETA, the State Educational Technology Directors Association, and at the federal level, there's a clear understanding that the digital divide still exists. It's not called device divide now, it's now broadband divide. And we realize that is you want to talk about the economic development of a region, try to attract businesses, small or large, to an area, not just to get the business connected. We can do that. That's our problem. We have 120 schools connected via high-speed fiber, and they're running right past, on telephone poles, 20 neighborhoods that still are on DSL or slower. And so it is absolutely, I'm saying today, your scenario absolutely is the case. But we're having microcell cellular towers that are able to be spilled out. Even cellular broadband is so much faster than it was today than it was 5 years ago. So I think we need to be building and thinking out for what that's going to look like. I know today, absolutely, it is still the homework divide that you're describing.
And from a business perspective, I was just thinking, Disney, unfortunately, they don't care that you don't have it.
Yeah.
But they see the marketplace is so rich that they know that they have to have it for everybody else. And I think that's why these initiatives are so important, because as somebody who may have, like if I have Disney Plus, I don't want them to stop doing those things. I want more of that type of stuff customized to me. And so we have to recognize the efforts that are needed there to make sure that happens, and also be cognizant that there is another group out there that is demanding this.
And there's a recorded session that was on, I didn't get to see it, because again, we were in the control room for it, but there was a EdTech Leaders for Advocacy. There was a session on Monday that was for that. This is the I believe, the most dire advocacy effort that we need to be right now focusing on, especially in the Commonwealth, because of the level of rural connectivity that is, or lack thereof, that's an issue. It's a great question.
We can do one or two more before we jump to the next.
The gentleman in the back.
I'm a 8th grade classroom.
Yeah.
The Twitch examples are just interesting, with the idea of like trying to figure something out, and that's where you go and watching something. The way that most schools and most classrooms are structured at this point, though, it seems like the immediate market for that would be like school is a game, and here's how to like act, as opposed to like going to a student or going to a student's peer-to-peer Twitch service to figure out how to do algebra or understand symbolism. It would be, here's how to hack Mr. Brown's class.
You don't think they're doing that now, huh?
Was that? Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That would be. I don't know. Not really questions. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, no, and I think that's important as well. So, Kevin, did you have one you want?
I just keep thinking, unlike Best Buy and Target and so forth, you have a workforce in education that's very different from all those other things. It's not like you can go in and say, we're done with the labor contract starting tomorrow. And there's already a shortage of teachers. where, you know, so if you want 24/7 service, where are these people gonna come from? And I don't think it can all be kids teaching kids.
No, but-
Eventually,
Can I give you a possibility? How long before, you know, physics teachers that have physics degrees are rare. It's 1/3 of all physics teachers across the whole country have a degree in physics. I don't know why schools don't say, why can't we hire one teacher between the two districts and Zoom? Right?
And some are
That
doing
would be a cost
We've
savings.
been trying distance learning
Yeah.
since 1989.
I know, but it's, you know, like, think about what's happened just in terms of meetings. I know, like, I see you on Zoom all the time now, right? Like, we're more connected than we would have been 10 years ago.
Sure.
I'm not saying education's right there now, but it's like that wave is still coming. And so I think, you know, if I were a superintendent of schools and I didn't have a physics teacher, I'd be talking to a partner to find out, is there a way we could save money? I'll pay for half the teacher, you pay for half the teacher, you get them one day, I get them the next day, and we'll just go back and forth. And as a teacher, I probably could figure that out.
Well, and I'm going to go back to your hacking because I think it's the same example. So I look at it as the homework groups. Like in my age group, I had to get a ride to a buddy's house so that we could study or do a project. And that was the limiting factor, right? Because it was tough to sometimes. You had one car, you know, that mom and dad shared, and mom and dad worked, and you couldn't always get it. And so it was very different. Today, I'll hear voices from my daughter's bedroom and naturally be somewhat concerned until I get up there and see that she's in a study group, you know, out on Hangouts, or if she has her phone propped up and she has FaceTime with multiple kids on there, and they're going through problems. And I get that they're hacking your class, but they are legitimately giving themselves access to opportunities that, you know, who knows how much better we could have performed in our academics if we would have had that collaborative accessibility that we didn't. So that's a good example of go ahead.
Oh no,
Yeah.
it's just to clarify, like if we were to continue to teach the way that maybe we did 10, 15 years ago, then that incentivizes like checking the boxes and doing what I need to do as opposed to doing the learning. What you're talking about is close to what I see in my concept.
And then you embrace it. You share with kids, hey, this is okay. I don't care that you do this. It's not going to help you if you're cheating, because you can't pass my class.
Yeah.
And that puts it now. That's why we have to then acknowledge it, so that we redesign to make it so that it's hack-proof, essentially. You know, we're almost shielding or putting in a firewall to our service.
Yeah. But if you're talking to a room full of people, I think you would acknowledge that this is a reality, but how many of our colleagues acknowledge and don't acknowledge it?
Well, what I will tell you is that I thought the new teachers wanted to like string me up. I had about 60 teachers, and they, like, when we talked about these things, they talked about it from their own personal perspective, and they were not necessarily ready. And to Kevin's point, education is different. It certainly is different than Best Buy and Target and all that. But so I'm not saying that this will happen, but I think that we have to be thinking about it, because if we don't acknowledge it, it's you know, the story that we tell sometimes is, you know, which company invented the digital camera? Kodak. Kodak is trading at $5 a share because they didn't see what was going to happen to digital photos.
Well, they did see.
Well, right. They told them put it
Somebody
away
saw
because
it.
it's going to ruin our film business, and they were right. It did, right? And so like I think we have to at least be looking at it. All right, Jay.
This will be the last question because we do have 30 more slides.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, Jagger.
I just want to add on. I think what Kevin was saying and what he was talking about hacking the classroom, and I mean it's exactly what you were saying in terms of, you know, maybe schools not recognizing or community not recognizing that this is how the kids are now, and the business of schooling needs to change to and adapt to what the kids want, right? So Dana Boyd talks about this in it's complicated, like pretty detail about how, you know, we used to allow kids to go out and play, but now there's so much other things that are going on that either kids don't have that luxury to just go out and play, right? Whether it's a safety thing, whether they're just in so many after-school activities and clubs and whatnot. The only way they connect to their peers now is through technology. And so, the way that we have to look at technology is also the way our society has evolved over time. And that's a direct result of why kids are using technology.
And honestly, the reason why we developed this is great. It's to your point, the people in this room might get this and, even agree with this in some regard, but the board members, it's hard for them to make the connection, perhaps, the community members, the parents, but they can connect to, I do DoorDash. I want things delivered to my door. I want that convenience. I want to be able to go and say, what are my styles? And I want you to ship me once a month a Phantom magical wardrobe. They do it for makeup. We just started, all of a sudden, this Peapod truck shows up to my house. Do you guys have Peapod out here in Western PA? No? Okay, but you have something. You probably have Amazon Fresh, right? We don't have Fresh in our area, so our local giant grocery store partnered with Peapod, and now it costs me $7, and I have a coupon every time we do it to have them deliver. Well, my truck uses more gas than to go $7 round trip, and we can order it online and it delivers. And it costs me a lot less because we don't take my kid along who takes everything off the shelf and costs me twice as much when I'm at the store. So this idea of being able to reduce the impulse buying that occurs oftentimes in that arena.
And then how you pay. Like I talked about how my daughter was doing tutoring services, and she doesn't come home with a lot of cash. She comes home with her phone and says, "Yeah, they just Venmo'd me." And now when she owes me money, that's how I collect, right? I'm like, okay,
really,
absolutely, right? Like this is we've changed the way that we pay, and to the point where I don't like to take my credit card out and certainly not hand it to somebody who goes off and does to wherever and then comes back. And maybe that's just me, but I expect to be able to just pay for my watch. That's an expectation for me. So these it's changing the way that we're doing the currency piece. And the listening devices, although we're not allowed, my wife says no listening devices in our home. That's fine. But being able to control things with the sound of our voice, I think, is another thing that we're seeing. And
who has the Xfinity voice remote? Really? Oh my God, it's life-changing.
No,
I don't know channels. I don't care channels. I speak into it, Matlock. And it brings me all 17,000 channels that have non-stop Matlock. It's fantastic. I don't have to worry about going and finding it. But it put the TV Guide out of business. It even put the own guide in the app out of business. Because I can now speak and it delivers. And get me what I need at the exact time specific to what I need at this specific time.
If you know Jared, that's exactly what he wants. He speaks and it delivers, right? That's how he is. But even the jobs that we thought about at one point that were, things nobody could replace.
Insulated. They're able to be, they're safe from the automation.
So and by the way, education is one of those. We feel like we're safe because and you go to
robotstakemyjob.com.
You go to teachers, they're safe. Things like accountants, they're doomed. But, here we have a cheeseburger robot that's putting all those things together.
This was just in January.
And when you think about the McDonald's experience, even now, you don't even have to go to the counter, right? If you go into a McDonald's store, they have that big panel, you can go over, tap, customize your order however you want, make sure it's right.
Go through, we'll just kind of fly through here. This was actually, when we were designing this workshop, or this session, I actually had ordered something that day before, okay? Told me within 2 hours it would come tomorrow. The tomorrow was us sitting and planning for this, at which I saw the dude on my watch, that's my hand, saw the guy show up on my Nest Aware camera, and then immediately after that the alert came from them showing the picture of it on my front porch. Okay? That is the experience, right? I'm tracing that. The same thing happened, my daughter, now 16, just started driving, had a shattered windshield, a stone went up and hit it. I was able to pinpoint the location. What it used to be, whenever you had to wait around for the cable guy or the windshield guy to show up, what do they do? They give you a window, right? We'll be there sometime. And then you have to take off work, you have to, well, not anymore. I got an email the night before that I was able to pinpoint the location of my Safe Flight guy and trace him. I watched him on a map drive past my driveway. I looked up and said, oh, there he went. When he came back, I said, you drove past it, didn't you? And he said, oh, I hate that GPS thing. Right? But you can see, and that's, as a consumer, I can get it when I want it. I know, and I don't have to take off work.
And this is one of my favorite apps. You know, you go to Sam's Club now, you can use the Scan and Go app, so that as I go with my phone, I scan that in my cart, and then I just swipe and walk to the exit. I don't have to take things out of the cart, put them back in the cart. I don't have to stand in line. There's no the line to get out of the store. That's the only line I have to stand in. And so, you know, like I walk past all of them. So being able to sort of customize, you know, your shopping experience, and even doing the analytics yourself. So if you know, like using Camel to search Amazon pricing, so you can see, like, here's whatever it is, a makey robot kit. When, you know, like, you can actually, you know, the normal price is $50, but you can see a couple of times it dropped below $40. So you can set an alert. So for us who buy a lot of like the STEM type stuff, I just set an alert and say, when it goes below 40, let me know. And I'm on vacation with my wife, and she's like, what are you doing on your phone? I'm like, I just bought stuff, because one click, right? I get the alert, I hit one click, it's bought, and it's being shipped. So this also changes our experience of things, and things like Zillow, where they identify, you know, all that information, they provide that information to you. Jagger?
For your previous example about
Yeah.
camel, there's a tying it to the earlier part where we talked about how people can just go on YouTube and get a tutorial. There's a tutorial that you can write your own script that does that.
Great.
Within like 10 minutes.
So here are some of the implications. You know, this is one set of implications from sort of the DoorDash type thing, where we reduce the impulse buying, and we think about, like, you know, just think about what if kids could accelerate through their content. Like, how are we personalizing learning so that you can individualize that? You know, that's one of the things I think that students want to do. And then how do we maximize the time that we have, you know, with all the kids? And, you know, I know Jared, especially going through this with a daughter in high school, you know, like in math class, do they really have to do all the problems? Or once they've figured it out, is that enough? You know, like, and whatever that number is, right? If that number's 1, okay. If it's 5, okay. But why do I have to do, you know, all the odd problems at some point?
I hope there's nobody in here from Pearson, but if I could tell you the amount of times that Pearson has been spoken in effigy in my household because of having to go through and be assigned in order to get all of the badges, except that she got it after page 1, and it's page 1 of 7. It's caused so much teenage stress and anxiety in my household that is just not needed. These are the types of things that, thinking about meeting them where they are, we need to change our mindset that every kid does not need every other problem, the whole problem set. And I was not that teacher, right? Admittedly, right? When I was in the classroom, every kid got the same assignment, and you did have to, and you were too, right? That's how you got full credit. I accidentally skipped them.
Yeah,
That's why you know what I'm doing.
Yep. So that was one of the things, and I think this ties directly in. Like, when Jared was talking about the watch and tracking his package, it's like real-time progress monitoring. And think about this, like, it's still the way, like, a kid submits an assignment, and when they submit the assignment, they wait for the grade. Well, the equivalent might be that the kid would know where that paper is in the pile of papers. Okay? And that once the grade is in there, they would be notified immediately that the grade's been posted.
And
with
the
their feedback.
expectation that pile of papers is processed within 2 hours. If by tomorrow, if handed in within 2 hours, right? They don't get that. And it's hard as teachers. We're burdened, we're working till all hours of the night, but there's absolutely research to show that if you don't get feedback within a window of time from the time that you've taken that assessment, it's irrelevant. You might as well not even waste your time then giving the assessment, other than to have the quantitative grade in the grade book. It's not going to change the reflection, right? In fact, it's just going to probably put more of a barrier because the students are mad, they're angry. That's another effigy that's spoken in my house. They know. I hear the teachers that take weeks, months even, to grade a test. That's what we're talking about.
And
here.
so the consumer, you know, I think we're being trained for immediacy. I'm not saying that's a good thing.
Instant
But I am
gratification.
saying it's a thing. And we have to recognize that's a thing and then figure out how do we deal with that thing that's out there. So, there are, the one that was at the bottom there about thinking about like AI. No, it's fine, because like you think about the AI part and self-assessment and Fitbit, like how do we figure out like, I track, on my watch, I'll track all kinds of stuff. That's what we need for kids. Like we need like that tracker so that we can know, and if that data were shared with a teacher, that kid's got it, move them on. That kid doesn't. We've got to, or their steps aren't quite there. That's what we're looking for in this. And then go ahead and show the next one. So you think about like the experience of learning, of buying is also different. Where you had to go to the store, you don't have to go to the store anymore. They're viewing your room, and where you can actually use augmented reality to show what that item will look like there. Because I know that's the thing. Like my wife would be in the store standing there saying, I wonder what it would look like in our house. I'm like, we didn't have to come here for that. Okay.
I can remember,
again,
me
leading to an argument.
and my construction projects, I can remember because I'm a techie and pretty good at Photoshop, it would take me hours to go and get rid of the background and take that Photoshop, whatever it was, and that addition on the house and superimpose it on top of our house or inside of our house. Now it's in the click of a camera button on your app, whatever it may be.
So stores like IKEA and Amazon, they have this, and you can buy socks this way now, right? Like, or shoes. I'm sorry, shoes. Right? You put your socks out like this, and you can see what the shoes look like. I don't know how that helps.
Glasses like on your face,
yeah.
but shoes on your feet, I don't get.
Or the dress thing, like, and again, I don't know. That to me seems a little creepy, but
Did you not just say you wanted the mirror?
Yeah, that's
You
to
just
work out, not to see. Like,
Because that's much better.
absolutely. So, and we have to be cognizant of what's happening. And here's another one of those examples. Like the graph that you see through the darker line is a medallion license purchasing and the value of them. And what happened, like if you
Explain
bought
what medallion was.
So a medallion license is for a taxi cab, and it's expensive. So like if you're in New York City, you buy a medallion license so you can run a taxi cab service. And if you bought that the day before Uber started, not good, right? That timing was really bad, and we just need to. Again, I don't know what's going to happen here, and it's not a doom and gloom, but we should be looking for that, because if you knew that type of service was coming, you wouldn't have invested in the medallion license. Because Uber and Lyft, and of course that's a personalization as well. Like, I can order the ride right from my app, and I can customize it. I can see the person who's there. I have their picture, their license plate. I know I'm getting into that. So those types of things. And so these are some of the implications we see from some of those, where we're trying to, again, be flexible enough that we can individualize it for the
Well,
kid.
we even saw, I know, anybody here from Montour School District? I mean, I know that, when you go to a district and you see it, they obviously paint, a picture that may be different. I mean, that's from your footprint, so I know you're smiling. But we're all, it's the way that it is. But, I mean, there was reality. We stopped and talked to students, and they're able to customize their schedule a lot more than what it is in our kids' school experiences. If they want on today, they really want to go and take a different class. Oh, you're outside of the 10-day drop period. Or even worse, a student gets into a class that maybe in the first 10 days, they're not sure if this is right for them. It might take 30 days before the content, you know what, I'm just not into this. They can't, they're locked, right? Imagine an entire year of being locked. Well, you don't have to, because that's what a lot of our kids are.
And for his daughter, my wife's a school counselor in that school, their schedule's already done for next year.
Yeah.
And it will be difficult for them to change it. And they have classes they haven't even started. Well, they just started.
But when she was picking, she
right,
did.
when she picked back in November and then met with her counselor, she had classes she hadn't even taken, and she had to schedule for the following year. These are teenagers. Like, they change every day sometimes, and yet we're locking them into these things because of a schedule and other things. So you can see some of the, like the iterative progress on assignments would be, like, again, maybe this is what you're thinking of as solutions. I don't necessarily have the answer. I don't think we have the answer, but I think we need to be considering them. So let's shift over now to the other side, because we're sort of short on time.
Yeah.
But thinking about the geopolitical nature of of the world, and what that means for education as well. Because we sort of talked about consumerism, but we need to talk a little bit about this. And like I believe Google's trying to take over the world. I'm okay with that. Okay, and so I know they say like they want to help, and they put out that great commercial that makes people cry, not me, but and so they do those types of things as they're trying to tell you. But really, what is Google doing? Like, what makes Google so successful is that they collect information, and data is the new oil, right? Like data, when we think about like Amazon, it seems like all the time they're sending me stuff that tells me like what I need to be purchasing, and I'm always like, such a contrarian, I don't want to buy it, but I can't help myself. Right, I know. So
but the oil is not what is the value, right? It's the product that you make from that oil, or it's how you use that oil. And that's what we're talking about. The Fitbit for kids that was before, we had a school district in our footprint that was using Watson. And it's just not ready. Even the companies that are developing these very progressive forward are any of in your footprints using IBM Watson? Well, it's not IBM anymore. It was bought by somebody else. But the Watson was to begin to take, so often we have data, but we've already had questions that we ask, and therefore it bias filters, and we end up getting answers that we probably expected. What we want to be able to do is allow the algorithms, like Amazon. Why can you get something the next day or the same day? Because they use predictive analytics that already stocked something in a warehouse because they figured you were probably going to order it. Whether it was because you added it to your cart and that's your trend, that usually takes you this many hours before you make a commitment.
But it's not just you, right?
And all the people.
They know how many they need.
Right.
And as an example, like I did a little experiment where I turned on location tracking in Google Maps, and I took a trip, and I went out west, Arizona, New Mexico, and we went, and I put in, so I was very intentional about what I did, but I put in Winslow, Arizona, because I wanted to see the man standing on the corner. And some older folks might get that, but the man,
no one knows.
It's okay, I don't know.
You say it every time, and no one knows.
No, some do, some know. So I go there, we see the man standing in the corner, there's actually a statue there. We go into the restaurant across the street, never searched for it, but Google knew I was in there. Because when I went into my tracking and I checked it, it said that you were in that restaurant.
And there was a research report out there where somebody went around, did the same travel, they turned their phone completely off, had next to their Android phone that was completely on, and the same data was on both phones when they were finished, when they actually did a little man in the middle to see the data that was on it. And so it's always tracking you, whether you think you're turning it off and blocking it, and probably putting inside a lead box wouldn't help either. So, when you think about the implications as well, I mean, the geopolitical forces, I can tell you that when, obviously we remember this event in January, okay, and immediately, it's not just impacting the 24-hour news cycle. Think about what the news cycle is. The very next day, my daughter texted me from school and said, "You're not going to get drafted, are you?" And that was a thing. It was actually posted out on the draft. Give me the name of the government agency that manages the Selective Service. That a lot of people got. It was. I don't know if you saw this. There was fake text messages going out saying you need to report. It was phishing. They were trying to get people to click and give information because they thought they were being drafted. It blasted through the kids. It was so much that Newsella put an article out about it. If you go to Newsella, there is a no, this is not going to elicit the draft, and here's what the draft was and what it is not, and how our armed forces are so specialized today, the draft probably wouldn't work. Newsella recognized it. So when we see about how the global economy is driving the news cycle, it's driving more than that. It's driving what our kids are seeing. It's driving all the environment that they're exposed to.
And so these are some of the implications. Lots of things on data privacy, getting kids to understand like how they're tracking. Like the way I do my shopping is I do go to Amazon. I'll search for something that I'm thinking about buying so that it'll keep showing up in the ads and remind me to buy it. Right, so but getting kids to recognize this, and this is the type of story that happens where this guy held up a sign very quickly. Held up a sign. He was on. So they're doing like one of those sports shows where the guys are talking. He holds up a sign that says Busch Light supply needs replenished. Venmo, and he put his address on, and then people started Venmoing him money to the point where he got $67,000. But then what happened was an Iowa reporter went back in his history, found out that he had put in some tweets that had a racial bias to it, and called him out right on that. And then it turned out that that same reporter who had called him out had done the same thing, right? And you're like, where does it stop? You know, like,
Luckily,
so,
it stopped
yeah.
with him still raising $3 million, even though the beer company was going to drop it. They still honored and matched, and it was a good, happy ending. But what it implicates is, or what it shows is, what we've been saying all along about the digital footprint, and it's all of our kids are leaving that no matter where they go. We didn't have to deal with that. And we like to call it digital exhaust because so often it's invisible. You don't even realize. If you think, my 67-year-old father comes and says, you know what? It doesn't matter. These people, we don't understand how they're getting caught on camera. Because if you think you're not being filmed or recorded, the fact that I just said filmed, recorded wherever you are, you're mistaken. Right now, we're being filmed, recorded. Right here it is in the middle of the room. That's being broadcasted out to YouTube. Everything we do is being streamed in a sense. And this idea of failure and knowing that failure is an option, right? We see the James Dyson model. We see how SpaceX can blow up a rocket that cost them millions and millions of dollars. And we all, I'm sure, probably maybe reveled in the Tesla truck on national release of smashing their smash-proof windows, right? All of these things are showing how excellence is not always the first time. And I don't know that we necessarily adopt that model with our students.
And then sort of our last category, I still remember like what I would do to get my news was read the newspaper, right? We got several newspapers and now news is instant, right? And you can see that social media outpaces print newspapers in the US. And people like Ed Sheeran who left social media because of the trolls and the people that are being mean to him, right? And we live in an era where we see people that are saying horrible things online, and so that's one way. And some of our answer is we just won't give them access to it. But then you can use it for good, right? When you think about the Dalai Lama and the messages and the way that they can connect to people in such a positive way, right? You have both extremes that are out there. And we tend to focus on the negative, but there's all these implications that we need to be thinking about with our kids in this political sense of having them develop empathy and humanity so that the trolls will go away, right? And so, I think as we sort of wrap it up, to me, there is a doom and gloom aspect a little bit to this, that if we don't want to be Sears. As education entities, we don't want to be Sears and Kohl's and JCPenney. We don't want to go out of business. I don't think that we're saying that, but we are saying that we don't want their mistake. Like those who don't learn from their mistakes are condemned to repeat it. And there's a set of mistakes that those groups made that we have to be conscious of and sort of examine. And so Jared thinks we gave answers. I don't think I gave any answers to you on like what to do, but I hope you walk away thinking I got some things to think about. Because to me that's sort of the point that we're at. And if we do that, I'm really optimistic because across Pennsylvania I see such innovation taking place that I feel like we'll be in a good place by paying attention to the trends, applying it to our local education entities, and then moving forward.
We think this is probably one of the only presentations at the conference that we're kind of diving into this. I didn't see any of the agenda. I've been looking, and this is the first that we've seen and developed like this as well. So certainly, if you have some feedback for us, share. We really think we think we're onto something here, and we'd love to continue the conversation because we can't ignore it. And I think it's enough connection to our school communities that I think we could get the buy-in to really make some significant change by really tapping into what's already existing. So you could have gone to any session to end your conference. I hope this was one. Nobody got up except for Jim, but he's dealing with a poor internet issue, or poor Jim is dealing with an internet issue. Our internet actually. But otherwise, thank you so much. Hope you, if you're traveling home, if this is your home, have safe travels. Otherwise, hopefully we'll see you next year at PEC.
And then we didn't make them feel.
Okay, you can go now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Jigger, you got your hand up. Don't you want to come up here?
was gonna ask you, have you done this with the board or?
Not yet. Yeah, not yet. Yeah, we've done it as a keynote for a school district, and we did it for our own new teachers. But not anything with the decision makers, you know what I mean? In our own footprint.
Yeah.
Have you done it with your?
Yeah, they were like,
Have you done it with your?
well, what was funny,
Not yet.
well, some of them were like, well, we don't,
No,
some
seriously,
young,
I just
yeah, we,
shared with you
they're
that.
the ones that use it.
Yeah.
And they were like, we don't
Yeah.
even do this, and then they were, like, when I mentioned about
Yeah.
real-time
Yeah.
tracking, and they were talking about like IEPs and things like that, and they were like, oh my gosh, no, we can't do that, we do too much already. And, you know, so,
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah, that's always fascinating. It seems really serious. It's counterintuitive to its own aspect.
yeah.
So it's counsel and legal.
No, this was great. It's called the
Oh, good.
Okay, I'll remember.
Thanks for
that.
titling it this way because it was.
Yeah.
There's somebody we can.
Yeah.
I think you know these three. So this was like, I don't think there's gonna be anything else like this.
Yeah, right.
There's 17
Yeah, we didn't think so,
Yeah.
so.
There's like 17 good sheets.
Yeah, right.
This is a resurrection.
But it was really, I feel like it's gonna be really helpful to be able to go back and
I
like when
remember
colleagues say,
or what it was, 2017.
who tend to be
I pitched
resistant
this,
to
and it didn't get accepted, so we didn't develop.
trying something different,
Yes.
will say,
And
Yeah.
so we
you know,
ended up having, we
the
were
same
actually
people
doing,
who do the
right,
survey.
that's
right,
right,
like,
yeah,
like
right.
people say like, well,
we're
why
doing,
do you
you
need all these
one of our
choices?
school
Yeah.
districts that we
How did you buy those shoes?
Absolutely.
Just being able to articulate that and a couple of other, you know,
Yeah.
some arguments we've been kind of used to.
Oh, the whole auditorium.
Some of the stuff you guys brought up.
Who is,
Yeah.
thanks very much, is gonna be my soon-to-be assistant exec. Jiggers, she is the superintendent there that brought us there. So,
But there were a
yeah.
few butts squirming in seats.
Yeah, it was okay. No, you know what? I think it was pretty well received at Greencastle. I mean, you know, because we
I can see the
then, so it was a
pre-service
keynote.
teachers being really uncomfortable with this, because they're being told very different things.
Oh, I believe that's true. And even, you know,
I mean, they come, I'm sure you get them,